Okay, I haven't posted anything for a long time. What I've been up to of late, which probably, if you've followed the Har-Bal Facebook page, you would notice that I've been finally getting back to finishing off my Har-Bal Harmonic Balancer version 5 release software development. It's been going pretty well. Still plenty, well, it's largely feature complete. Sorry, I'm a bit exhausted from late nights, but it's that's why I can't speak properly. And it's late nights doing development work, but it's largely feature complete at this point in time. I'm just going through bug fixes, making sure everything works properly. In terms of a timeline for release, it's probably it's complicated because actually there's the Windows version is functionally complete. I haven't actually embarked on updating my build files for Mac OS, so that's probably going to take a bit of an effort to get that up and running as well. Not too much of an effort because the core code that does the VST3 hosting is already working on Mac anyway. I'd proved that 2 years ago or something when I originally started doing it. It's just a case of getting the build going and getting rid of any glitches associated with the hosting running on the background player app rather than the main GUI app. What else was I about to mention? The other complicating factor with regards to release is that I have to change my e-commerce provider because my existing one is basically crap now. They used to be okay, but the business got sold to another person, and even though I haven't actually been doing a huge amount of business in terms of software sales, it's been very, very slight and not much money in terms of sales going on there. I've received nothing since August 2024, basically because when it got sold, my payment channel got cut off basically, and the current owner is just hopeless. He's not sorting that out. He's not making any effort whatsoever to sort that out. So I'm basically going to ditch that and then switch to, I think, what's it called now? I'm trying to remember now. Lemon Squeezy, I think, as a e-commerce provider. So that's actually going to take some time to actually sort out the license back end for that change in provider. So that will delay any release, but in terms of functionality, it's pretty much there. Sounds like my dogs are about to go to go for a walk with my partner Kathy, because I can hear them barking in the background, getting excited. So that's pretty much the situation in terms of development at the moment. Before I actually show you demonstrations of what you'll actually get when I finally release it, I should probably say something about the change in circumstance in my monitoring situation. So basically my monitoring I have access to now is a 5.1.2 surround sound system. If you basically look over this thing that I'm pointing to, that's got a big volume control in the middle of the front panel, is my new monitoring receiver, which is a Yamaha V6A or RX V6A 8-channel receiver, which gives me access to 5.1.2. In terms of actually physically using that for things like mixing and mastering, I can't actually use it in the 5.1.2 amp setting because basically the way you connect to the receiver and send audio to it is through a HDMI cable. And HDMI standards, when it comes to PCM, raw PCM audio, only support 3 formats, which is stereo, 5.1 and 7.1. So the way I have to actually do it to be able to mix, even though my monitoring setup in terms of speakers is 5.1.2, is I have to pretend that it's 7.1 so that it goes over there in 7.1, and then set up my side speakers in 7.1 instead of being side as being ceiling. But then if I want to, for instance, watch, say, a DVD like this, and on the very top, what is it, around about, get my finger high enough, right there is a Panasonic, I can't remember the model number, but it's a high definition Blu-ray player that supports Atmos audio, which plugs into the back of the receiver, and I can watch DVDs such as this one, which is my only HD DVD, Ultra HD DVD that I have at the moment. So if I actually want to watch that and listen to the Atmos audio, I have to use the 5.1.2 amp setting in the receiver. Now the complication that arises between that is that for pretty logical reasons, it has 2 different amp outputs. It's got amp output to side speakers for 7.1.2, and it's got amp output for ceiling speakers for 7.1. It's got side speaker outputs for 7.1, but for 5.1.2 it's got a separate set of outputs for ceiling speakers. Obviously the reason for doing it that way is so that if you're rich enough and you can afford having both a 7.1 setup and a 5.1.2 setup, you can have them both connected to the amp at the one time. But I've only got the 5.1.2, so the way I actually do that, I don't know, you can't really see it, but down here on the side of the thing that my stack of gear is actually sitting on, there's 2 pairs of speaker switches. So I've got 1 pair of speaker switches that allow me to switch between the 7.1 output or the 5.1.2 ceiling output, so the side output. So I can change which amplifier the ceiling speakers, which, there you go, there you can see one of them there. And basically you can see, if I move my head, there's one of my rear surround there. And they actually match, because they're based off the same design as my original monitors. They pretty much perfectly match in terms of the frequency response. So it's a very accurate 5.1.2 rendition. Although I don't have a subwoofer because these things go down to 27 Hertz anyway. So I don't need the subwoofer. But yeah, when I was watching this, the soundtrack is very impressive. So where was I? Yeah, okay. So, but I also have a second speaker switch to switch my main monitors, because I've also got here a conventional stereo receiver right there, like the 80 watt Yamaha, 80 watt per channel Yamaha, so that if I'm listening to like CDs, I usually play it through that. Whereas if I'm doing the surround stuff, I use the RXV 6A. So that's basically the changes in my setup. So I can probably at this point start talking about developments in Har-Bal Harmonic Balancer. So I'll switch views and I can minimize this. So here you see I have a test session. I'll just make sure that it's fully on screen. I can't remember whether it is. Yeah, it looks like it's covering the entire screen. And what I've got loaded in it at the moment is, actually, just before I'll discuss what I'm actually listening to, or what I will be listening to, I'll show that to you. This first thing I'm looking at is Postcard, taken off this DVD by Steven Wilson. It's basically a live concert recording of his Get What You Deserve tour, and it was recorded in, I can't remember the name of the building, but it's a cinema in Mexico City. It's got high vaulted ceilings, and it's fairly deep in its construction. I think it's like 40 meters in length or something. And I think the stage is about 20 something meters wide and 20 meters deep as well. So it's a pretty big venue, and it's got like 18-meter high ceilings. And I basically captured the audio from the Postcard track to computer, so that I could actually fiddle around with it and demonstrate what you can actually do to improve sonics. And that audio that I captured, at least from my computer's rendition of it, is 5.1 basically, 5.1 surround, where basically the center channel they don't use at all. It's just a quadraphonic sound track with a subwoofer channel. So it's effectively, I guess, 4.1 then. And probably the reason for that, I don't know the accuracy of this, but I got it from a chat with Gemini about what I was actually doing. And according to Gemini, that PA setup that they actually used in the concert was quadraphonic. So he had rear speakers and front of house speakers. So sort of makes sense that it's recorded that way. But anyway, I'll switch back to my previous view. So here I have basically my version 5 prototype. So it's loaded up a 5.1 source material. So if you look in here, you've got your left channel, your right channel, center, LFE, left surround, right surround, and the combined. So the combined is sort of the equivalent of using mid-channel in stereo, but there's no sense there's no sense making mid-side processing for sound formats that include more than 2 channels, basically. So That's why I don't do it. I just have a combined left surround, right surround, LFE, center, right, whatever. So again, like normal, you can switch between them, see what's there. You can see the center's got nothing in there. You've got the LFE. There was a added complication here that I only fixed last night. Basically, that LFE channel in the actual wave file is full bandwidth, whereas when it actually goes to a receiver and gets played back, it's played back with a filter with a cutoff of 120 hertz. So originally this would be showing a lot of content way up here because it shows exactly what's on the wave file, but that doesn't actually represent what you hear when you play back through a receiver because it gets cut off by the internal filtering of the LFE channel. So yeah, last night I quickly implemented like a LFE filter to put on the LFE channel for the analysis so that it cuts that off and shows realistically what is what contribution you're actually going to hear when you actually play back through a proper system. So yeah, because this basically was out here, there was content way up here. Now it's cut off, so it's more realistic. And similarly, I had the same issue with my Har-Bal Redux plugin, which can take like say a 5.1 content and then reduce it down to stereo. Well, the problem is if I took that and reduced that down to stereo in the way my Redux plugin was implemented before, that would cause problems because all this content that isn't filtered out in this track would suddenly now appear in the left and right channels. So there was a massive timbre shift between the 5.1 rendition and a stereo rendition because I didn't have included in my Redux process that LFE channel filtering. But again, I added that last night to fix it, and sure enough, it's much more consistent now. Yeah, so that's basically it. You can see that it probably does make sense as a quadraphonic sound system because if you look at how much content there is in the rear surrounds, it's almost as high as the front speakers. So yeah, probably makes sense that they did use a quadraphonic PA. Probably inspired by Pink Floyd in the 70s or something. But anyway, and the combine basically just shows the sum of all that content together. So that's pretty much that. Now, because it's now supports multiple channel formats, when you actually configure playback, you get a choice of what you want to set up your sound system to be. But on Windows, it's only for ASIO, and it's also supported this high channel count is also supported for Mac OS, but it's not. If you look in, say, that, even though you have access to these bus formats, I only have access to 2 channels because I haven't supported high channel driver counts for those models. It's only implemented for ASIO. So if you want to monitor high channel audio, you'll basically need to use an ASIO driver. So as you can see here, this is basically my channel setup. So that's my how it routes to basically this over here, my voice meter instance that sends it to my receiver over there via HDMI cable. So what else? Now apart from that, apart from having access to high channel, you can analyze now high channel content. Oh, I suppose another thing I should say is that if you're using like AIF file format or WAV file format, both of those actually support metadata on channel names. So it'll automatically pick those out, and you'll basically get the right channels mapped to the right one of these. What I'll say about this actual extraction that I did of Postcard from that live concert recording is the metadata was actually wrong for my system, because the actual left surround, right surround were actually mapped to left side, right side. So I had to fudge it with FFmpeg to actually make it correct, essentially change the metadata. Because the problem is, if, for instance, it was as it was, which was left side, right side, instead of left surround, right side, right surround. Basically, all these channels map according to name to these channels here. So basically, it would that content would have got mapped into these two here, because I've got the current bus configuration of 7.1.2. So I guess that's another thing I didn't actually mention, because the bus that it does the processing on, which is specifically associated with VST support, you can go either way. You can upscale or downscale. At the moment, this is upscaled to 7.1.2, so it's effectively like a Atmos bed format. Atmos bed format. And I've got nothing connected to monitor the side channels, basically because I don't have a receiver capable of that. And even if I did, I wouldn't be able to monitor it, because you can only get 8-channel PCM across an HDMI cable. I need a different route to be able to send the audio across. But I don't need it, basically. Yeah, so that was basically that. So now this new icon here allows you to open up your plugins. Whoops, I didn't want to resize it. Plugins slots, right. So what you'll note here, it's a, what was it? A 7.1.2 channel format. So that's got 10 channels if you add them all together. So it's broken down here. Each one of these is basically a slot. I've given you access to 5 slots. I don't think you need much more for the context that you're likely to be using it for. I could potentially enlarge it at a later date if need be, but I think 5 is probably enough for 99% of everybody's uses. So in each slot you have an access to a full bus plugin slot, and then individual slots for each of the channels. And then you've got this number here. This number here basically says how many output channels there is for this slot. So it's outputting the full 10 channels, which is, so you can either output to the full bus, or you can output to the same channel as the input channel. So for instance, if I clicked on that, suddenly becomes 1. So that's 1-to-1. So if you put a plug-in there, it'll be a mono plug-in and it'll go from center to center. But these Spatial Pan instances are full bus instances. So it takes the left channel, feeds it into a full bus instance of Spatial Pan, and then the output gets incorporated into the full bus. Now, how that actually gets incorporated, how this all works, I can actually explain to you through a whiteboard. And I'll do it with a very simple circumstance. So this, I'll get it close enough so you can see it. So this just corresponds to the stereo case. So imagine in this case my bus, my VST bus was only stereo. So what we're dealing with is stereo. I'm just doing that for simplification. And in this case, this is showing the circumstance for those individual channel slots being configured in mono, so with a 1 on them, not the 2 as it would be if it was doing a full bus width. So basically you've got your signal coming in, then it goes into these are the left and right slots. So if you had a plug-in instance there, it'd go in there. Then it gets added back into this bus, and then potentially routed through this. Now this switch in here that you see, these common switches, are in place and change depending on whether or not you actually have a bus in here, a plug-in here, bus plug-in in here, or whether it's actually completely disconnected via the on-off switch on the VST bus control panel. So the situation you see here is basically this plug-in either missing or turned off. So in that circumstance, you see it comes through the individual channel plugins, goes through here, and then have I missed something? No. Yeah. Well, it would normally be presented as, actually, you can ignore that. When these are switched off, you can basically ignore that. So basically, left and right just comes and goes straight to the output. Same here, goes through there, straight to the output. Now, if it was switched the other way, you would see that the original left and right signal, these channels get added to the original left and right signal, and then they go into the bus, and then they go out. So that's sort of how it works. That's essentially how it works. And when you've got the bus plugins set, the channel plugins set to output the full bus width, then you'd have extra outputs here. So I'd have left and right for this, and they'd get routed left and right there. So to just expand it. And the whole reason why I put that stuff in there was essentially just so that I could do my spatial processing using Spatial Pan to create early reflections, because it's a very useful thing to do, and I basically wanted to get away from having to actually process, like if I was doing a mastering or a upscaling or something, get away from having to work in Har-Bal, then export it, then go into, say, Cubase or something, and then build a session there and whatever. This makes the whole thing a hell of a lot easier. It's much simpler. It's all in one spot. So that's the point of that. Now, if I go back to what we were looking at before, so yeah. Now you got pretty much, see, I can click on that. It'll bring up my plugin instance. You know, you can bypass whatever, turn it on and off, all the normal stuff. I've got my spatial pan set up. So here you can see in my spatial pan set up for this Stephen Wilson concert. I'm basically, like, I've got direct path switched off, which basically means that there's going to be no direct path signal generated by these plugins. All the direct path signal just comes from the original bus and goes into synthetic space. And I've got my early reflections in synthetic space turned off because I'm using Spatial Pan instances on those source channels to actually do it for me. And I've basically pushed the rear channel, oh, that's interesting. I thought I had some names defined for them, but maybe not. The rear channel surround stuff further away from the listener than the front channel, so I just thought that makes more sense. And basically the geometries that I am using, is that consistent? Yeah. We're sort of based off rough geometry sizes that I was able to glean from Gemini, what it told me the size of the venue was like. So that's pretty much it. And then I've got my Redux plugin, which is currently reducing to stereo. But again, you see, I can choose any one of these formats. Now, the other feature that you can see on here, there's this drop down here. This specifically refers to the rendering button. So recording the changes to the output. So basically what it's saying, that in the current circumstance, when I press record, it'll produce a 7.1.2 format output file. But I could change that, for instance, to stereo, and when it'll record, it'll only create left and right channels in the output. So when you couple that with my Har-Bal Redux, because you put a Redux instance there and you select stereo, so then all your content is only in left and right channels anyway, means I can simultaneously record a stereo mix. So with those settings, I'll be able to record a stereo down mix. With these settings, I'll be able to record a 7.1.2 mix, or these settings, I can record a 5.1.2. So it means with the one track filter, the one set of bus plugins set up, you can do down mixing to any format that's available in here, basically. Any one of these formats. Yeah, you can see that the list is basically the same. It's got the same possibilities. So that's basically flexibility for you again. Whereas if I were to do that in, say, Cubase or something like that, it'd be a lot more complicated than that. This is basically trivial. There's nothing to it. So, yeah. And of course, this has no effect during monitoring playback. The only thing that counts in monitoring playback is basically what this is set to, and if you're using, whoops, didn't want to do that. If you're using a Redux plugin, what that's set to. So because even though I'm sitting on a 7.1.2 bus, I've only got a 5.1.2 connection to my receiver. So that is my basic monitoring reduction that I actually use in my plugin setup, because that actually fits my speaker system. And it gives a realistic rendition of 7.1 in 7.1.2 in that format. So, but also, what I can say is, because I'm sitting in a 7.1.2 and the original source was 5.1, this is actually an upscaling operation. So I'm creating more content. Well, in terms of room ambience, I'm creating more content than was in the original recording. Now I'll just interrupt. I'm going to interrupt this for a minute because I need to go and take some bread out of the oven. Actually, I jumped the gun a bit. It's got another 10 or 15 minutes to go, so I'll just continue on with a few other talking points. The other thing I can say with regards to the plugin configuration, like you've got this plugin configuration here and whatever, in terms of how that's actually stored, the plugin configuration is stored in an entirely separate file to the filter file. Originally, I was thinking that maybe I should integrate them, but it works actually much better this way, because what I can do, for instance, which I can show you pretty much straight off, if I go in here, for instance, and then say I'll choose a format that's going to okay, so I could choose 5.1.2. Now this is essentially my native listening setup, and now if I do that, you can see it's automatically updated everything there and left plugins where it was. And if I can go back to, actually it's not actually where it was, but what it'll do, well, it is actually where it was. Yeah, sorry, because this left surround, even though it's oh yeah, sorry, because that's the source channel. I'm confusing myself, but yeah, all the plugins were basically left in place where they were. When you actually do a change like that, if I go and actually have a look at the folder where this actually lives, I'm trying to remember where I am on the disk. Here we go. So it's basically this file. Because I haven't actually saved a filter file here, you see I don't have a filter file. It means all the plugins are actually in here, the plugin files. So you see it's created two different ones. There's one for 7.1.2 setup and there's one for 5.1.2 setup. So like if I suddenly created, I switched to stereo, for instance, it would create a new one of these, which would be .stereo. So it creates these on the fly, basically, and it bases existing plugins setups for the new format on whatever was currently in there at the time. And so this way of handling things is also very useful for, say, when you're dealing with working on, say, 10 different tracks in a compilation or something, because you'd start with the first track, you do your EQ and stuff and whatever, and then you get all your plugins set up for that, and you think, okay, but I want to use that for the next track. Well, all I have to do is open up the next track, because when I open up the next track, it uses the existing plugins setup that's currently in memory to create the plugin file for the next file that you actually open up. So you don't have to recreate anything, it's just already there. So it makes things very easy. Yeah, so, and not only like, so this button here is for basically opening that up, obviously, that's the bus thing, but I've also added this one, and basically all that does is completely switches in and out the VST hosting. So with that on like that, it's using the VST hosting. With it off like that, it's completely switched off and there's no VST hosting being used. And theoretically it should be, what do you call it? Trying to think of the word. Latency compensated, so that when you switch between one and the other, it should be the same. I'm not 100% convinced it's actually working correctly at the moment, but yeah, I'll have to look at that more closely. So if you want a quick, what's the time now? It's 10 past. I've probably got about 10 minutes before I have to go and take the bun out of the oven, so to speak. Hopefully, not that sort of bun though. Real bread. Anyway, so in that 10 minutes I can probably do a demonstration of this particular track. So as you can see, I haven't done any filtering to it. I could be more, what do you call it, anal about it, I guess, and make some improvements on it. But generally speaking, I actually regard this DVD as, in terms of the sonic presentation, probably one of the best live concert recordings of contemporary music that I've actually heard in a DVD format. That said, I still find it quite sterile in terms of presentation of the actual environment. It doesn't sound like I'm in the concert hall listening to Steve Wilson and his band performing. It sounds reasonable. And like I said, it's definitely better than. It's probably the best live concert recording I've got in my collection. Not that I've got a huge number of them, but it's by far the best one that I do have. But it still can be improved upon. So what I shall do is I shall actually play. I'm just trying to sort out in my mind which way I want to play this first. I guess, yeah. First I gotta check what's my Redux setting. 5.1.2. First up, you're not actually going to be able to hear that over headphones, so I'm not going to use that as a presentation format. I'll use stereo, so that means the Redux, it's reducing this 7.1.2 to stereo using my wide pan algorithm basically, and a whole bunch of other stuff to get something that's more realistic and more representative of what the actual surround format actually sounds like than contemporary reduction. So now in that format, if I toggle between that with VST off and on, you'll be hearing a combination of two things. You'll hear the effect of how well Har-Bal Redux does the reduction in preserving as much of the spatial content as possible. And you'll be also hearing the presence or absence of my synthetic space and spatial pan instances creating room ambience. So those are the two differences you're going to be hearing. So basically when I toggle this off like that and play it back, it's going to be going to the receiver as original 5.1 format. And then because what you're actually going to be listening to is coming from the headphone jack on that receiver, the receiver is actually done a bog standard reduction to stereo and playing it back here. So you're going to hear a stereo reduction of the 5.1 format of the original recording in this format. And then basically when I switch this on, you'll be hearing my stereo redux plus the effect of synthetic space and spatial pan. So let's just try that. So starting with the original.
I think it's time that I got off the kitchen floor. But is there really any point at all? Waking up this morning felt the same. I better sleep while life is so mundane.
you can hear my computer working a bit hard in the background there because there's a bit of a hiss going on. That's mainly because this is a debug build. It's not actually optimized code, so it's not fully optimized. So that should reduce the load by probably about a factor of 2 or 3 or when it's actually optimized. Yeah, so I don't know, what do you think of the change? It's like, I'd encourage people to actually listen to it in headphones rather than speakers, because the difference is likely to be more pronounced because you don't get any room effects in headphones. You're not hearing any natural, like if your monitors are set up in a fairly live room and you actually play back the original, it's effectively like having added reverb to your recording, your original recording. So the difference between my additional reverb and your plain room will be less because you've got the room itself adding something to it. Whereas if you're listening to it in headphones, that's all you're actually hearing. You're just hearing whatever is actually on the recording and nothing more. And basically me hearing that, it's basically the sort of image which has gone from here to sort of there or something like that. It's really opened out when you add the synthetic space and spatial pan processing to it. And you'll also note when you're looking at the voice meter output, when I was toggling between them, in the narrower one you had 4 channels of audio going into the receiver, and in the wider one you've just got 2 channels, which is the output of my Har-Bal Redux processor, which just goes to show the strength of the algorithm within it to do that reduction, because it preserves a much bigger spatial width than simple channel reduction that is incorporated into things like that receiver and standard Atmos processing and things like that. And of course, because it's not using head transfer functions, it's not restricted to headphone use. It sounds just as good, if not better, through speakers than it does through headphones. So it's a highly compatible mode of reducing high channel mixes to a stereo format and preserving as much of the spatial content as possible. I guess the other thing that I forgot to mention when I was talking about changes to Har-Bal in this release compared to the previous, the filtering engine and the spectrum analysis engine are completely different in this version. Well, I wouldn't say completely different, but the implementation is quite a bit different, because in Har-Bal 3.7, the filtering is done by an 8K, like 8192 point finite impulse response filter. And that's quite computationally intense, basically. It's fine for stereo because you've only got 2 channels to work with. But if I'm needing to do filtering, say for 7.1.4 or something like that, that's 12 channels. You've got 12 channels of audio, you multiply that with that many filters, it's going to put a hell of a lot of computational load on your computer. And on slower computers, it might not actually run properly. So as a consequence, I basically re-engineered that entire filter engine to actually be a multi-rate filter. So now, instead of being built on a 8192 point finite impulse response filter that works across the entire band. It's constructed as a dual sample rate 1024 point finite impulse response in two different bands. So you've got a 1K FFT, 1K FIR dealing with the high frequency content of the entire spectrum, and I can't remember exactly where the crossover point is. I think it's around about 400 hertz or something like that. So from 400 hertz up to 20 kilohertz, it's all handled by the 1K finite impulse response filter running at the full sample rate, like the native sample rate of the signal. And then for the low frequency end, you've got another 1024 point finite impulse response filter, but that's operating at 1/8 of the sample rate. So whatever, if it's say 44.1K, the sample rate for the low frequency end is probably going to be around about 5 kilohertz or something like that. It's 1/8 of the full bandwidth. So as a consequence of that change and the way that's structured, and it's built in such a way that if you have a flat frequency response, it just passes everything through unaltered, and it preserves linear phase and things like that. It's cleverly put together, so it actually works as well as the 8K FIR, but it has like about anywhere from 4 to 6 times more computationally efficient. So it's much more conducive to be being used in a high channel context. And similarly, so that the analysis is consistent with the way the filter works, I changed the analysis engine to work on pretty much the same principle. So slightly different. It's double resolution, so that the high part uses a 2K spectrogram to figure out the high frequency real-time spectrum, and the low frequency is again 1/8 the sample rate, but it's only a 1K spectrogram because I don't need the extra resolution, because it basically cuts out in terms of preserving the total resolution of the filtering, so that it's comparable with the original 8K filter. So the other benefit that you get with that, I'll have to go and get the bread out in a minute. The other benefit you get with that approach is that, what was I about to say? Oh yeah. The responsiveness of the real-time spectrum. Basically, like in the original 3.7 implementation, you're using an 8K window moved across the entire time series to generate your individual spectrum snapshots at a particular point in time. Now, 8,000 samples is 8,192 is a pretty wide window. So as a consequence, that sort of has a time smearing effect. So it's less, if you like, it has less temporal resolution. Whereas in the new one, that's shrunk down to 2K samples. So in terms of temporal resolution, it's 4 times better. So I can't say with certainty. I haven't done solid testing, but probably it'll be more accurate with things like peak taming, because it has a better temporal resolution, so it'll do a better job of it. rather than the 8K that it was before. And as a consequence, you'll also note that when you're watching the real-time spectrum display, it seems a lot more active than it was in the past because of that change in temporal resolution, because the other one was smearing it more. The only consequence of that change is that if you open up a historic 3.7 filter file, which you can do, the analysis within that filter file will be inconsistent with how it currently works. So the way it actually works now is if you open up an old filter file, it will open it, but it'll upgrade it. And in that process of upgrading, it'll do a full reanalysis of the track and everything. And then that upgraded filter won't be openable in the previous version, 3.7, because it'll be incompatible. But I've catered for that by when it actually does an upgrade, it will take the original filter and it will save it to a new file with a .bak extension on it, so that you can always go back. If you needed to go back to 3.7, all you have to do is delete the new filter file and rename that one back to the original and open it up, and it'll be fine. So there's no danger there in terms of the upgrade process. Yeah, and right now I have to pause things and go and deal with my bread. Yeah, the other comment that I'd make regarding that Stephen Wilson recording is probably the thing that I find least impressive, like in terms of the sonics of the entire band and that part of the recording. That's pretty much fine for me. The thing that just doesn't quite sound right is the sound of the audience at the end, basically, because if you look at that, they've really cut the bass end of the audience right out. If they extended it out here to about 200 hertz or something and then filtered it off, it would sound more natural, but it sounds very, I don't know, monochromatic, if you like. It just doesn't quite sound right to me. But I can understand why they did it. It's basically you do that because the audience microphones are picking up a lot of stray bass and stuff, and if you add that into the complete mix, it'll make everything sound like mud. So that's why they've done it. But I think they probably did it a bit aggressively, I guess, at the expense of the sonics of the sound, of the audience sound. But yeah, the music sounds fine, especially once you add the room effect. Add room. I'll get that a bit closer. Add the room stuff to it, which I've done. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and probably the other thing I could do is illustrate what that's actually adding to the mix, which I can easily do by first up, look, I'll bypass pass-through. So what you're hearing is just my synthesis of a venue sound, if you like, the sound of the room. Well, it's obviously not the real sound of the room, but it's a synthesized sound of a room of similar proportion. Now if I take out the reverb tail and you just have the early reflections. It's well, there you actually hear that if I switch this off, suddenly the original stereo comes in. That's those switches that I added in my diagram. If you take it out, then that gets added back in. So if I want, how am I going to do that? Oh yeah, sorry. That's all I had to do. Press the bypass button, dummy. So that's the early reflection. That's early reflection plus reverb tail. And what was I about to say? Oh yeah. The loss in bass with the early reflections is a deliberate feature because if you have a look at the settings here, we've got this LF cutoff of 300 Hertz. And the reason why I do that is because you don't really want to be adding reflections at low frequencies, because the general effect that that's going to have is creating pretty, like, especially in smaller rooms, wide notching in your bass response, which will start to sound like coloration. So by actually filtering those early reflections to only pass the high frequencies, you get the benefit of the spatial cues, but you don't get the coloration at the bass end. You don't get as much coloration. So that's why you hear that change in bass response between whether I've got this bypassed or not. So when it's bypassed, you're just hearing the early reflections, which are rolled off at 300 Hertz. So that's why when I bring that back up, you suddenly hear more bass.
I'd like to light a cigarette.
So that's probably all I need to say about that one. I was going to show a different example. So for instance, the other thing I was working on, I don't have it in, do I have it in reach? I might have to go and grab it. Oh, where did I leave it? Hang on a tick and I'll just grab it. Where is it? Not that one. Yeah, hang on. So, before I got my development mojo back and started working on this again, I was actually doing re-equalization on this CD that I have in my collection. It's the, I think is it PG? Is it? Oh, it's PG3. Oh, I thought it was 4, but it's actually PG3. It's Peter Gabriel, his third album basically, and the one that was responsible for Phil Collins' gated drum sound, because this is the album that they actually developed that technique on. And curiously enough, it's also an album that has no cymbals in it whatsoever. The closest you'll get to cymbal sound is on one of the tracks. I think it uses a tambourine, but that's it. Basically, Peter Gabriel just asked Phil Collins to leave his cymbals at home and just play drums. Which is curious because when I actually heard someone talking about that, I've forgotten the name of the guy. I think he does a producer type mixing YouTube channel or something. When he was talking about that and mentioning the fact that it had no cymbals, it only just struck me then that, oh shit, yeah, it doesn't have any cymbals, because I didn't even notice. I've listened to it thousands of times before and never really noticed that he doesn't use any cymbals in it. It's just drums. But yeah, so yeah, I'd basically done EQ in 3.7 for all of those tracks before I got my motivation back to actually work on the latest developments in Har-Bal Harmonic Balancer. So I shall use, it's an interesting source material to actually demonstrate this as well. So I'll show some of that. So, yes, I was trying to open it. Okay, here we go. I guess I can start with the first one. Well, that's interesting. It's writing things to the wrong folder. I need to fix that. And even though it's in 7.1.2, I might actually change it down at the moment to 5.1.2 for simplicity's sake. Okay, yes. So you see, when it was in 7.1.2, it preserved my plugin settings from the Steven Wilson thing, which is what I was mentioning before. If there's no plugins file present, it will generate a new one with those plugins. Now, because I was working on this in 5.1.2 and I had saved it before, I already have a plugins file for this, and that's why it's dropped all my spatial panning, because I wasn't actually using it. I was only using synthetic space. So this is just using synthetic space with discrete early reflections and Har-Bal Redux to stereo. So that's all it is. So now basically when I'm toggling VST on and VST off, all you're hearing is with VST off, the original stereo plus some EQ modifications. Relatively minor, not a lot of things happening there. I'm just getting rid of vocal harshness, adding a bit more body to the vocal, getting rid of some boxiness in the bass guitar, and adding back some brilliance that's lost from, I presume it was recorded on tape, analog tape, so tape losses. So that's pretty much all there is in terms of that. And probably added some air there by the looks, yes. That's essentially it in terms of that. And then a relatively small room. Well, not relatively small. It's a moderate size room, but it's not a huge room. That's pretty much it. So I guess first I'll probably play it obviously with VST switched off and just show you the effect of the EQ changes first. So. So I think you will have noticed that I added the VST processing in there, and suddenly things opened out into a wider sort of a space, whereas before it was rather dry and small. Nicely panned, nice imaging, but it just didn't seem as big. That's all. When you add the reverb in there, it makes it sound quite a bit bigger in terms of a spatial presentation. I guess the downside on the gated drum sound is it sort of negates that to some extent, because the actual when you actually play a short transient through a reverb-like synthetic space, because of the complexity and the nice uniformity of its exponential decay and the length that it's got, it essentially takes that transient and makes it sound like a decaying snare drum. So it sort of negates the gated drum sound a little bit. Not really in a bad way. I still like the sound of it, but it just doesn't have that stark cut off at the end that you get with a gated snare sound and zero reverb. But, okay, I can show you a different track as well. Probably another interesting one to look at would be, trying to remember which number that is. Yeah. This one, if I open this one, now the reason why I wanted to show you this one is not only does it have the effect of the equalization and the spatial processing, but it also incorporates multi-band gate, because being a quieter track, it has quite a bit of obvious tape hiss in it. So to actually, so that you actually hear that, I think I'll need to, where is it? I need to look at the properties of this, the filters, because I've got a noise gate. I'll disable the noise gate on that for now. Make sure, and when I actually play it, I shall mute my microphone, because this is actually generating quite a bit of hiss itself. So I'll go quiet for a minute.
The streets are lined with camera crews. Everywhere he goes is news. Today is different. Today is not the same. Today I'll make the action. Take snapshot into the light. Snapshot into the light. I'm shooting into the is news. Today is different. Today is not the same. Today I'll make the action. Take snapshot into the light. Snapshot into the light. I'm shooting into the light. 4 miles down, the cavalcade moves on, driving into the sun. If I worked it out right, they won't see me or the gun. 2 miles to go, they're clearing the road, and the cheering has really begun. I've got my radio, I can hear what's going on. I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this. All you people in TV land, I will wake up your empty shells. Peak time viewing, blown in a flash as I burn into your memory cells. somebody, you will like that too. If you don't get given, you learn to take, and I will take you. Holding my breath, release the catch, and I let the bullet fly. All turn quiet, I've been here before. A lonely boy hiding behind the front door. Friends have all gone home. There's my toy gun on the floor. Come back, Mom and Dad. You're growing apart. You know that I'm growing up sad. I need some attention. I shoot into the light.
Okay. So hopefully you heard the change in noise level substantially in that track. Yeah. Is there another one I'm trying to think of? Just trying to find something that has got an abrupt ending, because I wanted to make one final point. No, maybe not that one. I don't remember. There is at least one track that's got a fairly abrupt ending. I just can't think of which one it is. No. Yeah, that's interesting. It didn't open properly. Got a bug somewhere. That's interesting. Looks like I may have finally crashed something. I just got to check something here. Hardly surprising, given that it's development version. So, yeah, for some reason my player has crashed. It's not in the list anymore. Oh no, there it is. Well, yeah, I don't know what's going on. Something is amiss. It doesn't want to load. I think I have to restart it. These are the things that happen. Did I actually have... Yeah, look. Oh, something did crash because that's why it's taking so long to shut down. That usually happens when something stops communicating. Yeah, you can see. That's why it's got these instances stuck here. Well, you can see that it's not perfect at this point in time. I'll just restart it. Something locked up somewhere for some reason, but I'm not sure what it was. So the one I was thinking of opening was, what track is that? That's track. Yeah, that opens all right. Oh, yeah, anyway. Can't really find it. I like the drum solo from Phil, or the drum track on this one from Phil. I think it's impressive.
You know I hate to hurt you, I hate to see your pain, but I don't know how to stop, I don't know how to stop. Street after street, night after night, I walk on through the...
Yeah, I think I remember what I was going to show. If I take this track and now render it to a 5.1.2, let's just do that. And now if I go to where it got rendered and have a look, let's see, there's my plugin file, okay, 5.1.2 plugin. But if you have a look, and you can see there's the back file because this was upgraded. So that's the file. You can take it back to a 3.7 filter file. Oh, did I render it to a wrong folder? I didn't pay attention to where it was actually writing it to. No, it's there. Why can't I see it? Am I blind or something? Okay, 5.1.2, there it is, sorry, it is there. So you see, when it actually renders now, it puts the format in after the file name. So that's why if I choose a different format, it'll render to a different format, and it'll identify the different formats you can identify it in the name. But the other salient feature that I was wanting to mention is it creates this file as well. It creates that and that. The reason why it creates this is because I'm using VST plugins which have defined a non-zero tail time because it's a reverb, so it generates a little carryover right at the end of the file. And I've created two separate files so that if you're working on individual tracks, it'll be much easier for you to stitch them back together again if you want to put them in a linear format. Because you'll have the original, like this, the length of this file is going to be the same as the original file, and the tail sits on the end of it. So that was the point that I'd wanted to make in final conclusion. So as you can see, yeah, I've already done, for this track 7, I've done a stereo one before, a stereo rendering before. So you see, you can generate multiple output formats with the same filter just by basically changing that. And although actually, when I actually did that rendering, I made a mistake because I had this in stereo. So even though that is in a 5.1.2 format, it'll only have 2 channels of active data. I should have actually set that in that format and then rendered it. So I made a mistake there, but you get the idea. That's pretty much where I'm at this point in time. So I got to track down what the hell went wrong when it locked up. I don't know. Hopefully I can reproduce that again. I'm not sure entirely what it looked like. It was a deadlock somewhere. So for some reason and that's not surprising because the VST layer is really complicated because you have to have a GUI thread, and like the GUI has to be running the main thread and the processing has to be running a separate thread, and there's a possibility there to end up with a deadlock where like 2 threads are trying to access the same resource, and then if I've not written the code quite right, it could get in a locked situation, and I think that's what was happening there. So I'm not sure why that was happening, but it's going to be fun and games to try and track that one down. And that explains why it just sat there and did nothing. I'm sure it was a deadlock. I should have basically broken into a debug session, but I was in the middle of constructing this video, so I think that's pretty much it. Interested in whatever comments you might make regarding it. Like I said before, I don't anticipate being able to do a physical release for at least a month, probably longer, because I've got a lot of other shit to sort out before I get that far. So I'll leave it at that.